what is the absolute best loadout to carry here in the Hunter Call of the Wild in 2025? A lot of you guys have asked me that question, so today we're going to look at the best weapons for the most power, the most range, and the best versatility. And a couple of things to quickly point out. I like 4-gun loadouts. For me, that just is the best number. More than that, it gets to be too confusing. I think it's too easy to use the wrong weapon by accident, at least for me and my college dropout brain. Another thing I want to mention, for the DLC side, because we're going to do DLC loadouts and a non-DLC loadout at the end, there's two different kinds of loadouts. There's one that requires airborne birds, meaning you need a shotgun, and non-airborne birds. For instance, Silver Ridge Peaks, they have turkeys, but they don't need to be shot out of the air to get the score. Reventuli, on the other hand, with ptarmigan, you have to shoot those out of the air. So for the DLC side, there's going to be two different types of loadouts. With that out of the way, let's get into our non-airborne birds loadout for DLC weapons. So for our 7-9 gun, we've got the 375, and this thing is the undisputed best option for big game. Better than the 470, better than the 300 AR in my opinion, better than the 338. It's not as fast firing as the 300 AR, but it's so powerful. That ability to consistently double lung things like bison, water buffalo, it's just invaluable. It's so good to have, and for that reason, that's my #1 big game gun. Now moving on to medium game. For this loadout, I've got the 308 AR. Now you could honestly take your pick of like a dozen class 4 to 8 guns. I picked the 308 AR for a reason here, but even the Perry 308 that just came out, again, many other 4 to 8 guns that fit here, just kind of whatever your preference is. We'll come back to why I chose this in just a second. Now, we also have in this loadout the Quist Reaper. This is, in my opinion, the best class 2 to 6 gun. Now, there is a caveat to this, and it's the bullet drop. If you're not shooting right on the range that you're zeroed at, the bullet drop gets pretty significant pretty fast, and when you're shooting at class 2 animals, gray fox, red fox, raccoon dogs, these smaller things, that little bit of bullet drop makes a really big difference. So if that's something you're concerned about, obviously swapping in the 243 for this is just as good, maybe not quite as powerful, but the bullet drop side of it, it's a little more flat shooting, a little more consistent for shooting those small animals. That's a decision you'll have to make, but as far as straight up power and still the ability to zero out to 300 meters, the Quist Reaper is just awesome. And of course, it is semi-automatic, so when it comes to shooting small things, there is some benefit to that too. Now finally, we're going to go to our small game long range weapon, and that is of course the 22 AR. This is why I picked the 308 AR for our medium game gun. That way, one DLC, both of these come from the Modern Weapon Pack DLC, we get both of those guns in there. And I should have noted, the 375 comes from the Hunter's Choice Pack, and the Quist Reaper comes from the Rapid Hunt Rifle Pack. So with those 3 DLCs, that's our full loadout here for non-airborne birds acquired, and all these guns are awesome. Super powerful. They're going to take down anything that they're ethical for, and frankly, even some things they're probably not ethical for really, really well. Just as good as it gets, in my opinion, for those sorts of things. So now let's talk about maps that have birds that need to be shot out of the air in order to get the full score. And we'll go ahead and start with the 16 gauge here. That's going to be our shotgun for this loadout. I've done a lot of bird hunting here in the recent past. We've done a ton of pheasant grinding, over 7,000 kills of pheasants, been hunting for rare waterfowl a lot. There's just not a better shotgun. I can't tell you why the 12 gauge and the 10 gauge don't seem to take down birds as quickly or as consistently. The 16 gauge just does it, and for my money, that is the best shotgun if you're hunting for, let's say, ptarmigan or stubble quail, bobwhite quail, anything pheasants that need to be shot out of the air to get the score. The 16 gauge is going to be your best friend. It's got a 5-round capacity, pretty quick follow-up shots with the pump action. And of course, it comes from the Rancho map DLC, so it does make it an expensive gun if you don't own Rancho. You could swap it out. I would go with the 12 gauge pump. It's a base game gun anyway, so that's a non-DLC one, but just something to keep in mind when it comes to that. If you don't own it, you gotta buy the entire map of Rancho, not just a weapon pack. So moving on, we have the 7mm bolt this time for our kind of medium game gun. Now this covers up to class 9, so if you're on a map that you need a class 9 weapon and still those airborne birds, 7mm's got you covered there, but really, most of those maps don't have that. If you're looking to, take down deer up to moose, stuff like that, the 7mm bolt does a really solid job. This comes from the Hunter Power Pack DLC, so if you maybe have some of the other guns from that, really good option just to bring it out. Super versatile, super flat shooting, really solid power considering it's ethical for classes 4 to 9. A lot of coverage there, really, really good gun. And then again, we do have the Quist Reaper in this loadout too. As I mentioned, the semi-automatic capabilities, when you can do that, trying to shoot at, let's say, fleeing raccoons, raccoon dogs, whatever, and the fact that, frankly, if they're running straight away from you, you can still get vitals because it's that powerful, it's great to have. And I'll mention it again, if you don't like the bullet drop thing, if that kind of worries you messing up a diamond long range or whatever, swap the 243 out for this. That'll be no big deal. You lose the semi-automatic, option there, but you also gain some flat shooting. Now with this one, we have the 22 Virant in this loadout too, and you may be wondering, we've got a shotgun to cover class 1. Why do we need the 22 Virant as well? Well, for one, maybe we want to shoot a bird at 200 meters that's sitting out there on the ground. Obviously, a shotgun's not going to do that, but frankly, the 22 strat is just so dang good for non-birds, and even for bird species too, but when you've got an animal that's not offering you a good shot angle, being able to just shoot at its feet, or sometimes if you're closer, shoot into the air, and get it alert, get it to spin around and offer you that better shot, it's invaluable. So in my mind, you gotta have a 22 in any loadout that you're carrying, and the reason I went with the Virant here and not the 22 AR, A, we don't have another AR in this loadout to need, I guess less DLCs purchased, but also with the 22 Virant, you've got that 10 round capacity versus the 22 AR with its 5 rounds. You're literally double, and when you're hunting birds maybe that are flying away, those 5 extra rounds can make a heck of a difference. And as we come over here to Hirschfelden and grab our non-DLC loadout, something that I did want to go ahead and point out. You can, of course, mix and match with more total weapons. If you want to carry 5 weapons, 6 weapons, obviously that's totally fine. For me, it gets a little confusing, but especially using things like the 243 or 4570 pistols, you can really customize your loadout to your personal preference. And on that note, I'd like to ask you guys, what is your favorite loadout? What's the one that you bring to every map consistently and, does the best job for you? I want to know in the comments below. Obviously, we're all going to have our own, little preferences there. So I think it'll be good to see in the comments, especially people coming to look for what is the best loadout. More options in the comments, I think, gives people more versatility for what they want to do. So, let's talk about our non-DLC loadout. This one gives a little less space. So, what we've got in here, we've got our 4 guns, we've got 2 pairs of binoculars. All the loadouts, by the way, have that, and the first aid kit. This is, I think, like 0.3 units of space left. The others have a little more. You can grab some collars. No collars are going to fit in this, which is the only downside. But in terms of, again, what I talked about, power, range capability, versatility, these are your best options. So, for our Class 79 gun, we've got the 338 break action. I don't know why I have that reticle on the scope, don't mind that. Not the greatest thing, because the follow-ups are going to be very slow, but so long as your first shot lands, that 338 round is plenty capable of taking down the biggest things in the game. Water buffalo, plains bison, Cape buffalo, all that. So long as you get that shot lined up fine, one shot will be enough. Now we also have in this loadout the 7mm break action. Again, we're going to have the weird loadout on there, but I decided to go with the non-DLC scopes on here just to make the point. Got the Hyperion there, and even though both cover up to Class 9, the 7mm is far and away the best option for classes like 4 to 8. Your other non-DLC weapons are things like the 270. They just really don't get the job done. So even though we have like great coverage here all the way to Class 9 and could use the 7mm, I do find it to be a little bit weak, although you can see very good for Class 5. It's a little bit weak for, your Class 8 and 9. You can shoot moose and water buffalo, Cape buffalo with it. It'll get the job done. It will bring them down. But they're going to run further. It's just not as great an option as the 338. That's why we carry both. Now, obviously, for Class 2 to 6, the best option is the 243. We don't have a Quist Reaper or anything like that for non-DLC. You could go 223 if you wanted to save like a tiny bit of space. It's only classes 2 to 4. Frankly, with the 7mm, you don't need anything more than that. But the 243 is a little bit better for your Class 3 stuff specifically. Axis deer, roe deer, those sorts of animals. The 243 is going to bring down just a little bit faster. Now, I mentioned wanting a 22 in every single loadout. Unfortunately, there is no base game 22. So the best thing we can go with for Class 1 is going to be the 12 gauge pump. It's a really good shotgun. That's the one I talked about replacing the 16 gauge with if you don't already own the 16. It does a really good job at 6 round capacity. Again, fast follow-ups. I don't like the irons as much. That's another reason I prefer the 16 gauge. But as far as base game guns go, that will get the job done for all your Class 1 animals. Rabbits, pheasants, geese, whatever you want to go after. So those are kind of 3 loadouts, but for 3 different scenarios. Therefore, let's say the best loadout for each scenario here in 2025. And again, I want to know what you guys think. What loadout do you carry every day? What's the guns that do the best job for you? Because all of us are going to have different experiences, have different ones that we prefer. And again, I think it only adds to the knowledge base if everybody is putting their loadouts there in the comments. So definitely want to see that. I'm curious what you guys think of these and what you guys are using. And on that note, that is going to do it for this video. So as always, thank you guys for watching. Hope this helped you out, and I'll see you next time.